The entire Wide Awake Stories team and everyone here at the Insomniac office is still reeling from the tragedy in Las Vegas. Music festivals are a place where you can escape the trials and trivialities of work and life. The music and that magical shared experience strengthens the human bonds between us. They should be among our most beautiful memories, not our worst nightmares. This episode of Wide Awake Stories was recorded this past weekend, before we all woke up to the horrible news on Monday. We grieve with the families of those who were lost, and we're ever grateful to all the brave people who stood by their fellow humans to help, comfort, and protect them. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to Wide Awake Stories from Insomniac.
Now, here's a little story I got to tell about three you know so well.
Welcome to the Church of What's Happening Now.
From Insomniac.
This is a journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new value, and a new experience.
Broadcasting from the Insomniac HQ. This is Wide Awake Stories.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 13 of Wide Awake Stories. Lucky number 13, of course. I'm here in the studio with Dr. Rob Seamus.
Hello.
Mr. John Ochoa.
Surgeon Donald Jill. Is that a title?
And anesthesiologist Sam Yu.
Very sleepy.
That's true.
How you doing, Monica?
I'm okay. I'm making urgent updates to the EDC Las Vegas website as we speak. So pardon me if I start to speak gibberish.
Mad amounts of traffic to the EDC Las Vegas site. As you all know, we are on sale for EDC Las Vegas 2018.
I'm going.
You'll be there. I'll be there. Will you be there? Clearly, and I'm talking to the listeners now, clearly everyone will be there.
Well, maybe. Have you heard about this whole end of the world thing? I mean, it was supposed to go away on September 23rd. Apparently, things have been rescheduled.
Gotcha. I didn't get a calendar reminder, though.
Set your calendar. October 13th, it's all...
Oh, he moved it to the 13th?
Yeah, of course, because it didn't happen, so he's got to move it back.
Isn't that Friday the 13th?
That's too obvious.
Dun, dun, dun.
Is it Friday? It's Friday the 13th. That's marketing right there.
Yeah, it's a little too obvious.
I think that's marketing. Monica, what's going on in New York right now? Has the weather changed? Are the fall foliages coming down or what?
No, it's just summer forever. I like summer, so it's kind of cool. But yeah, no, I'm sure it'll turn on us like the fickle bitch that it is. Any moment now, I'm sure.
I got a little New York and LA this weekend. I went to the Broad Summer Nights. They had their closing party, and it was pretty awesome, man. It was a Basquiat show, and they did a whole series this summer. They did Andy Warhol, they did Takashi Murakami, and the closing weekend, they had Basquiat, and they had a couple really rad acts.
Here's what I did over the weekend. I trimmed the hedges in my backyard.
That's a euphemism.
I pruned the roses in the front yard. No, none of these are euphemisms.
Also.
And I didn't go to the gym.
Not a euphemism.
That's definitely a euphemism. Hey, you want to not go to the gym this weekend? That's like what I tell my wife hey, you want to not go to the gym? Want to sit on the couch and eat chili con queso all night?
Yes.
Yes. The answer is always yes.
Welcome to Wide Awake Stories.
We have an amazing show lined up for you. It's a little bit of a throwback show. I sit down with Mr. Pete Tong, the one and only, to discuss his upcoming Ibiza Classics show at the Hollywood Bowl.
You double-dipped this show.
I did, and then I bounced over to the rooftop of the Standard downtown to chat with the brothers Hartnell.
Please tell me you wore your glasses.
I did bring my glasses.
You didn't wear them, though, did you?
It was daytime.
Okay.
They wouldn't have been as impactful. For anyone who doesn't know, when I say the brothers Hartnell, I'm referring to the one and only Orbital. They are back together. They played the Electronic Music Awards. They've been doing a host of gigs all over Europe, and they are back and better than ever, and they've healed their wounds.
You got to explain the glasses, though, right?
Just Google Orbital. I'll save you all.
We got an hour.
Google it.
Sam, you caught up with some people at Nocturnal and talked to them about their first DJ gig, right?
Correct, yeah. I chased down Billy Kenny, Will Clark, and Cut Snake to get the details on how their first DJ gig went down way back when.
Well, let's kick things off with my interview with Troy Boy. We caught up at the Hollywood Palladium right before he took the stage on his Leftist Right tour and talked about his brand new album. So I want to start off by talking about your new album, Left is Right, which, when I listen to, is all over the place in the best way possible. You know, there's trap, bass music, grime, R&B. Do you find it challenging to switch between so many sounds in one project?
So with my Left is Right album, I felt I had to show my listeners what I was really sort of capable of as a producer. And I know a lot of the listeners of my music have really kind of taken a liking to sort of the trap fused stuff, but those listeners might not necessarily know that I could make house music or R&B or any kind of mixed genre stuff, which I ended up putting in the album. So I really wanted to use this album as just as a showcase for my sound, what I could do as a producer. If you haven't heard, or if you've heard stuff from me before, maybe a different route or a different sound I've created, and just to introduce people to what I could really do.
Was there any song on the album that was the most difficult to produce? Maybe a sound that you hadn't really quite yet explored or perfected yet?
I just wanted to make music, and I think whatever the best sounds that I came up with, I just ended up putting on the album. I actually made at least about 35 to 40 tracks and then whittled it down to like 20. It was very tough.
Even 20 is a lot of tracks, you know? Was it always your mission to remain so genreless, so to speak, so experimental? Or did that come about as you began to create more and more and discover your sound?
I've always wanted to be very experimental with my music, and since I come from quite a mixed heritage background, I definitely owe that to the influence in my sound, especially when it comes to like the world's music and the world influences in my music. Again, like, to have this album and have it done in the way it was completely intentional.
Much like your music, your background is quite diverse. You know, you're British born, you're of Nigerian, Chinese, Indian, and Portuguese descent. Was that all of them? Is it important for you to reflect your culture in your music and in your sound?
It's absolutely important for me to like reflect my culture in my music, because it's me. My music is like an extension of me, and it's definitely part of my story, which I try to communicate, but through music. Like, a lot of rappers can say their story through the lyrics, but I say mine through sounds, through timbres, through instruments. And that is, you know, when you hear a track with perhaps like a Hindi vocal, or, you know, that's definitely me reaching into my cultural heritage from India and paying homage to them. Whereas I might put some like African influenced drums in my tracks, and that's again paying homage to my African roots. Again, I love to play with that idea, and personally, like, I think that the best music does come from like world music and real instruments. So I take pleasure in doing that.
So did you grow up with these world sounds around you, or did you just discover them on your own?
It's a mixture of both, to be honest, but I would definitely say that it all roots through like, or stems through my parents. I mean, especially with the Indian influence stuff, like, I mean, as a child, I used to watch hundreds of Bollywood movies with my mum, and anyone who watches Bollywood movies will know, like, there's tons of songs in one movie. So if you can imagine maybe 9 songs times 100 movies or 200 movies, and that's me absorbing all of that kind of music. And again, I'll use Indian music as an example. There's so many different types of emotions that are expressed, especially, and I think the chords, progressions, especially from world music, is something that's completely and always like interested me. As I grew older, through those little ideas, I took it upon myself to kind of explore a bit more into world music and just take it from there.
In my opinion, world music has the best samples waiting to be discovered, especially Bollywood.
The riffs, the textures. I mean, for me, I love string instruments, and that's, I think, the most heavily used like instruments in like Bollywood music in general. I'm a sucker for world music, straight up.
Would you say there's a way to classify the Troy Boy sound?
Ooh, that's the tough one. It's a very tricky question. I think you'll know a Troy Boy track when you hear the traditional swing. I don't know. I think if you hear something pretty unusual, something very muddled and mixed, it's probably me.
Are there any sounds you haven't yet explored that you hope to one day experiment with?
Absolutely. I would love to, and I have already experimented with Latin music, reggaeton. I've actually made a pretty cool track, which I'll should be actually releasing very, very soon. And it's like a mixture of the Latin reggaeton vibes mixed with trap and hip hop. I can't wait to release that. And that has always been something, and especially the fact that I moved to Miami, I hear reggaeton every single second of the day. Couldn't get rid of Despacito. So if anything, yeah, that's definitely one thing which I've been wanting to like explore on.
I think we could definitely thank Despacito and people like Diplo for opening up people's ears to Latin sounds, and now Troy Boy to opening up sounds beyond the baseline. Since the beginning, your music has always straddled the worlds of electronic music and hip-hop. You know, there's a lot of trap heavy beats in your sound. On Left is Right, you even have a song with the one and only Ice Cube, which is mega. Any plans on doing a full-length hip-hop album?
I would absolutely love to. The thing with me, it's all good you making the beats, but you know, to truly make a hip-hop track, you're a rapper, don't you? It's very hard, I'll be honest with you. It's very, very hard to go to a rapper and say, hey, do you want to jump on a track? And I'm not really that kind of guy who likes to pester people and stuff, so I would absolutely love to. So if any rappers are hearing this, hit me up, man. I would love to get some rappers on my tracks.
Left is Right is also special because it's your message to the industry, a sort of musical manifesto to the world. Can you explain the meaning behind Left is Right?
For me, anyway, my music has always kind of been considered as left of center, definitely different. But then I've always said, whether it's left or center, in my head it's right. You know, it might seem left to you, but it's right to me. So it was also like a play on words, but then also it definitely represents you or the individual, myself, staying in your own lane, doing what you love doing, and you can still get to the end goal. You don't have to follow the traditional route like anyone else. You can be you and still get to the top. I've really wanted to display what I could do as a producer and not necessarily take the commercial route with the traditional song structures, you know, have every song with a feature on it, or have stuff which sounds like it's super pop friendly or things like that, just so I could make my name or to break it into the charts. For me, it was never about that. It always has been about what I can do, what I've made, and thank goodness what I've been doing has resonated with many, many people. This is an homage to them.
You're pretty deep into your Left is Right tour. It goes all the way through December. You're going to Europe. You're a busy guy. How do you see the Left is Right show as an extension of the album?
What I love about this show and this tour is that people have heard the music, but my Left is Right tour is gonna bring the music to life, and that's always been my goal. As much as you're gonna come to see me and listen to the music, I want to make it a complete unique experience, which is why I have brought so many different aspects and surprises to my show. And it's definitely not the traditional thing that you're gonna see when you see other DJs say they're gonna go on tour. Like, you might just see them behind the deck and that's just it, they're gonna play a set. But with me in this show, it's all original music, and it is a show, it is a performance, it's something different and something new. So it's more like an audience with Troy Boy, but on a crazier level. So I would urge anybody who hasn't seen any of my live shows or any of like my all original shows to come to this Left is Right tour, because it's what I've always wanted to do and how I've always wanted my music to be seen and to be heard.
For whatever reason, you want to keep yourself even busier, which you're doing now with your new label, T-Dot Music. What can you tell our listeners about T-Dot Music and what kinds of sounds are going to come out?
So yes, my new label, T-Dot Music, I've just launched that, and of course I put my own album, Left is Right, on there. That should definitely give the listeners or anyone who hears about T-Dot Music, that is the starting point, is my album. If you hear the eclecticness of that, I'm going to be signing artists just as eclectic, if not more eclectic. I'm even looking to sign and introduce people to more musicians, in the sense of not necessarily like a singer or producer. I might sign a classical sitar player, people like that, but something more interesting. I want to take things to the next level for me, and also have the flexibility to put out music which might not necessarily mean or be commercial, but they could have it on my label. I like to have things with edge, and T-Dot Music is definitely going to have the edge.
I know you're a hardworking guy, and I know you're already thinking about your next project. So what how far are you in your next project, or what kinds of exclusives can you give us here?
How about this? Well, the next project, I am 4 out of 6 tracks deep. So once I've completed the final 2 tracks with this project I'm doing, that will be the next thing on T-Dot Music. Like I said, when I made the album, I had, I think, over 35 tracks to choose from. So obviously those 15 tracks are still there. I'm still creating more music. I want to work with more artists. Eventually, I want to start my own festival as well. That's another thing I'm looking to do. So but other than that, yeah, the music and everything is all going to be consistently done as the boy normally does.
Broadcasting from the Insomniac HQ.
This is Wide Awake Stories.
What's up, guys? It's Preston. It's about to be the sickest thing you're ever going to listen to. Wide Awake Stories. We're going to play a lot of My Chemical Romance, and that's it. Stay tuned for the pit.
John, what was he like in the dressing room? I'm curious if he was like stressed out or if he was chill and relaxed, or like what was the vibe?
Dude was in sweats. Super comfortable. He sounds very British.
He's really great. I could listen to him read the phone book. He's got a very nice sort of cadence, accent.
I'd like to watch him read the phone book. Oh, did I say that out loud?
Monica's catching feelings.
So what's up with the show today? All the English people and...
Yeah, Pete Tong, a Brit. We chatted about his Ibiza Classics show that they're now bringing to the Hollywood Bowl, that they've brought to many other locations around the world and got an amazing response. He gave me a little bit of a sneak peek at some of the tracks that they'll be performing that they haven't performed before. So obviously, I don't know if I can tell you all, but you won't want to miss it. It's going to be a pretty amazing show to see classical reinterpretations of some of these amazing, historic electronic tracks that you've heard so many times in their original fashion, but really never done this way. It's a really cool thing that he's doing.
Artist Relations.
Hi, I'm Pete Tong. Just to tell you a little bit about the Classics project, the Ibiza Classics project. It all started in 2015, a couple of years ago. I got invited to curate a prom, which is in England is a famous series of classical concerts that have been going on for 100 years at the Royal Albert Hall. They wanted to contemporize the appeal of the proms concerts. These concerts they run for a month actually in the summer every year. So they approached BBC Radio 1. BBC Radio 1 talked to me and asked if I'd like to pick up the baton and run with the idea. It happened to be the 20th anniversary of me taking Radio 1 to Ibiza and broadcasting from there. So we thought we'd make a special kind of week of programming to celebrate the fact that we've been doing that. And what better way than to do a kind of classical concert at the Royal Albert Hall, playing all the seminal tunes from, that kind of people remember from Ibiza. So it took me about 6 months to get it all together. I got introduced to the Heritage Orchestra and to Jules Buckley through mutual friends' recommendations. So we start working on this thing together. It was quite a bizarre blind date because I'd not done anything like it before, and although their reputation preceded them, I hadn't worked with the Heritage Orchestra before. So, and it's funny, so basically the way it works is I pick the music and then I work on the arrangements with, and how we're going to do it. And for 6 months, like everything's happening, with phone conversations, emails, but you're not hearing anything because the guys are actually writing. Jules was writing out all the parts for the orchestra. So there was a lot of imagining going on. So it's a bit nerve-wracking until you don't really get to hear anything till the day before in the rehearsal because it's so expensive and it's logistical nightmare to get all these people together. So, but the concert went ahead. It was an amazing success. Fortunately, it was filmed beautifully by the BBC, and we had a real huge social media swell after the event, and everyone was asking us if we were going to do it again. But there was no plans at that time. It was just this one event. But such was the demand, we eventually put some shows on sale last year. So we did 3 arena shows at the end of last year, like 18,000 people at the O2, sold them out in a day, sold out Manchester Arena and Birmingham Arena, and we made an album to kind of commemorate the fact, this one's sitting here, that we were getting back together again and doing this. And then off the momentum from last year was such that the album really connected. It went kind of double gold in the UK, went to number 1 in the pop chart, which is quite unprecedented for something like that. And then rolling into this year, we've been able to do, we got a program of 15, 16 shows, which included our first festival run in the UK and Ireland, which I've just finished. We went to Ibiza for the first time, kind of taking the story back to its spiritual home, which was amazing. We made a film about that as well. And then we're going to Australia for the first time, and we're back in the UK for 5 arenas this time, which again we've sold out. Which is we're just finishing this week the second album, and I guess we're here to talk about the fact that it was someone had the crazy idea of bringing it to the Hollywood Bowl. So on the 9th of November, which is quite poignant now because I'm a resident here in America, and so this is it's a hometown gig at the Hollywood Bowl, which is quite bizarre.
How much sleep did you lose over deciding which tracks to select? Because I can't even imagine what the process was like. I mean, your classics, and then there's what other people view as the classics. How did you go about the track selection for the program?
For the first show, it was like 50% diplomacy and 50% kind of me being a kind of Svengali. So I actually asked, I kind of pulled all my colleagues at Radio 1 that were involved in the Ibiza story, both behind the scenes and DJs, as to what they thought. And then I had my own ideas as to what I thought. And initially we had I'll tell you a funny story. We had 70-minute slot to fill. That's what we were given. I think 75 minutes. And it seems mad now, but I had this idea that we were going to do each track for a minute. So we had 75 tunes. They laughed at me, like the orchestra, or the Jules particularly, just said that's absolutely impossible because I literally have to write out the parts for 65 players, and it would take me 5 years to do that many. So we basically whittled it down to 20 tunes. And it was a debate amongst me and Jules and Chris Wheeler, who runs the Heritage Orchestra, really getting into the kind of obvious things of what tracks would actually orchestrate the best. So, dance music history is littered with many tracks that reference orchestras or play orchestral parts, even though they're not played by real orchestras or sample orchestras. So they were the mainstay ones. A good example being Right Here, Right Now. Fatboy Slim sampled that orchestra part, and we were able to replay it. So that first batch was largely based on that, and it started to think about what tracks would have impact in the room. And then the other factor that came into it is I really wanted to reflect the full Ibiza experience. So I didn't just want it to be about, jump up and dance tunes. I wanted to have more the sunset story in the show as well. Hence why we were doing tracks like Belfast by Orbital and Porcelain by Moby and Rachel's Song even, which might take a few people by surprise, but was a Vangelis track from Blade Runner, but was a seminal kind of sunset tune that DJs were playing. So
when you think about, I think your average person who would see the headlines, electronic music, but with a classical orchestra, it would be kind of a disconnect. But I mean, whether it's people like BT or Hybrid are guys that I can think of that have really championed orchestral arrangements in electronic music. Talk a little bit, if you can, about just electronic music's history with orchestral arrangements.
Well, one take on it is certainly the fact that historically, you go back to the days of disco when the record business was a whole different animal, and the value in recorded music was so much higher. You know, the disco era, the accessibility to orchestras was a given. So, you know, we wouldn't have disco without orchestras. I mean, the South Soul Orchestra, all the studios down in Florida that were making those records, like the TK label and stuff like that, you know, right through to the kind of Barry White experience, you know, working with the Love Unlimited Orchestra. So I think orchestras and disco was hand in hand. It was really after disco was kind of thrown out, particularly in America, and became a dirty word, when kind of house music started, kind of rose back up almost 10 years later, through the inner cities and more the kind of underground world of Chicago and New York. New technology at the time was you know, the first Roland drum machines, those early synthesizers, and they had string patches on the keyboards, and you know, those people, you know, a lot of one finger wizardry, a lot of people making it up as they went along, because you know, all those early records on DJ International and Trax and those early labels in Chicago were quite often, it was the first time you were hearing the technology as well as first time you were hearing house music. And a lot of those records were tributes to back in the day, you know, like Farley Jack, Master Funk, JM Silk, Music is the Key, Joe Smooth, Promised Land. They were a homage to an era 10, 15 years before, and they couldn't get an orchestra, so they were writing orchestral parts on left or right hand. So those are the really interesting tunes to go back to and see how they obviously transform quite well. I mean, and then, you know, obviously looking at Detroit and techno, tracks like Strings of Life and Nights of the Jaguar, which came a little bit later, were fully blown, you know, attempts to do orchestral pieces, but they were doing with samples. So there's an awful lot of crossover between, you know, there's a natural link. But I don't think the people that wrote those tunes at that time ever, well, they could have dreamt that they were going to be played by an orchestra.
You as a selector, and as someone who kind of helps plot the course of where popular music goes, the success and the popularity of this project in an era right now where you're either on the tail end of the EDM swell, or you're on the forefront of the kind of techno deep house. The orchestral part, the arrangements, those classics. What does the popularity of this project to you say about where maybe popular taste in electronic music is going?
I think one of the things I wanted to set out and do with this was, I think to a certain extent, you know, a lot of people in dance music history, electronic music history, we all still have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder about not getting taken seriously by the kind of rock and roll elite, the mainstream, you know, I just think on a musical critique level, we sometimes feel we're not, you know, necessarily thought of in the same way as we should be. So for me, performing these songs in this way just adds gravitas to the history. You know, to see Good Life being played by, you know, Inner City's tune by 65-piece orchestra or Strings of Life, or, you know, Cafe Del Mar, Energy 52, to see these amazing tracks played by an orchestra gives, I think it proves something. It adds gravitas to how important these records were. I've said before that you know, everybody can tell stories about the Beatles and the Rolling Stones of how important that music was to a certain sector of the society growing up. Well, the songs I'm performing here were the soundtracks to people's lives that were going to clubs at that time. And that's initially who we tapped into. It was like that generation, you know, maybe that hadn't really been going out for the last, you know, as they get older, get families, get kids, get jobs, you know, and their clubbing days are beyond them, but they still love the music, and they never stop loving the music, and they never stop finding and listening to music. So there was definitely a massive connect in the UK when we did it at the beginning with that kind of demographic. And I think then the new audience is just like, well, they've only ever seen a DJ stand behind turntables, so there's so much interest stimulated around the whole world of electronic music and the performances and the festivals and the DJs and everything like that. People are kind of, it's a mature market now, and that's that very much goes for America too. I mean, even if the year zero in America, you take it just back to the EDM explosion in 2007 or 2008, that's already a 10-year-old mature market now. And so I think there's a real open-mindedness and desire to see something different. And that's been the real fun for me, taking the orchestra out to festivals, because, up to that point, at the end of last year, we were a hard ticket, appointment to see. So people, they like the album or they like the concept and they wanted to come and see it. But when we've taken it to festivals, we're getting a whole new audience, and it's definitely skewered young. Actually, we've just been playing in the we did 4 massive festivals in the UK. Just did Electric Picnic in Ireland, and you're playing to 20,000-30,000 people. At least half of them are not the people that came to. It's a younger audience. Some of them weren't probably even born by the time these tracks. But I think the fact they're seeing something different, and it's nothing like an orchestra. An orchestra is an amazing thing to behold, and I think that outside of the kind of movie score world, it's not, our orchestras aren't necessarily exposed enough to the younger generation.
This is Wide Awake Stories.
Hey, this is Cut Snake, and you're listening to Wide Awake Stories, and this is Cut Snake.
I'm super looking forward to that show. I don't know what tracks you're alluding to, but I've seen YouTube videos, and all the selections were outstanding. And plus the Hollywood Bowl, man.
Yeah, it's one of the most iconic venues in Los Angeles, if not the most iconic venue in LA. And the fall weather, it's going to be perfect.
I'll be there. You're hooking up tickets?
Yeah. Everything you need. I'm slanging them.
Date night.
Did you feel judged while you were talking to Pete?
I didn't feel judged. I felt very self-conscious. I mean, he is the
He's the radio personality of radio
And I'm sitting there, and we had one microphone too. So I'm saying and then he's standing over there, and he's like, "Give me the mic."
Let me show you how it's done.
Let me show you how it's done, son. I did feel pretty honored that he wanted to be on our podcast. I mean, he really has a prolific radio career, and for him to give us a little bit of time was definitely special.
You're tuned in to Wide Awake Stories.
And if you would like to hear more amazing interviews like this, be sure to link up with us on our socials, insomniac.com, on Facebook, Twitter. Do we have Instagram?
No.
Negative.
Do not find us on Instagram. Visit our website, insomniac.com, and call us on the Rave Hotline. What is that number?
310-818-9406.
We're going to go back-to-back English legends right now on Wide Awake Stories, episode 13. I bopped on over to the Hollywood Standard downtown and apologize for the funky hotel music in the background of our interview, but I sat down with Phil and Paul Hartnell from Orbital, one of my favorite electronic music acts of all time. I still remember catching their community service tour with Crystal Method, but even before that, catching them at Organic in '96 on the ski slopes of the San Bernardino Mountains, and Rob was giving me the sad eyes because he missed that show that weekend.
I've read about that show. It's legendary.
It's legendary. So we talked about them kind of reforming. Many of you may not know, they, as brothers do, had a tough time in their relationship. They weren't speaking to one another for a really long time, and mended fences, got back together, produced a great track called Copenhagen, which is out now. And they've been playing the festival circuit, and the vibes have been really, really good between them. And I think you can hear that in the interview. I'm here with the brothers, the legends, the rooftop of the Standard Hotel, Phil and Paul from Orbital. Hey, guys.
Hello.
You guys just had a show last night, performed at the Electronic Music Awards. Tell me about that. How was that?
That was fantastic. It was really, really good. It was like a great new concept, like the award ceremony. It's like this. If you give Paul Oakenfold the job to do an award ceremony, that's what you get. There's no awards, it's all like, it was just great. So he represented like Detroit, Juan Atkins, all these Floor Plan, all these other people. There were us and Moby, and then you had all the younger generation, all them doing their shit on another stage. It's fantastic. Award ceremony, it was brilliant. Yeah, it's good for like a party to represent like some of the chunks of history through the electronic music. It was really good, really good.
Really nice to just sort of be back over here doing a gig. It was we just did a half an hour because it was a special kind of gig, but that was great. Really nice to be back and playing again.
Yeah, and it was an important gig for us because it hooked in with Twitter, and they were doing a live feed, and there were some other people, other streaming doing that, and you could like look on the stream and you could choose which stage you go to, you know. So there's a lot of firsts, and there's like, you know, 360 things going on. But for us, like, we just got back together after like version 3 we're on now. Orbital version 3, yeah, totally.
What was it like getting together and seeing some of the old guard last night, like seeing Moby there?
It's fantastic. It was great. It was great.
It's just like being on the See the Light tour in '93.
Yeah, it was fantastic. No, it was really good. It was really good.
But that show last night wasn't the first show that you guys have played. You've been touring in Europe, you've been touring in Asia. When you guys finally reunited and got back together and played that first festival, what was the energy like, not only in the crowd, but what was the energy like and the chemistry like between the two of you guys behind all the equipment?
That's great, wasn't it?
Well,
good fun.
But it was a bit like, because we haven't even spoken to each other for about 4 or 5 years, and then playing live, and you know, we got into a bit of a barrier with our relationship, you know, that sort of cycle, and you know, and it's like, oh, well, you know, we don't know how to fix it. You know what I mean? And so, and playing live was important, but it was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to be. How is it going to be? And for me, it's important that we really enjoy it. We really get back to where we first started, and how with gay abandon is our favourite word at the moment. You know, it's brilliant. You know, and it was like that, and for us to enjoy playing together, because you know, and it was really like, and as the summer's grown and we've been doing it more and more, it's really like, it really does feel like, for me, it feels like we're just like, yeah, and when we're like that, we're in the groove, it just gets better and better. That's for me anyway.
Yeah, I'm just nodding on the radio.
Yeah,
great.
I hope you agree.
You just said we didn't know how to fix it, so I guess maybe let's back up for the people that might not be familiar and let them know what was broken to begin with, and then how did you end up fixing it?
Communication was broken, basically, and presumption and sort of frustration and not knowing how to explain ourselves, being boys and all that sort of thing, and not, you know, I just said, oh well, that's for me. It just seemed there was a wall there that, oh, we don't know how to do this, so we sort of ran away. I gave up on Paul, and you know, and he gave up on me, and you know what I mean, and we gave up, and then, you know, and then time is a healer, and it's going, you know, I can't cope with this. I've lost my brother, and then it just made the whole history of Orbital not worth it for me. I've lost my brother. What's that all about?
Did you feel the same way about losing your brother?
No, it's great. You know, it's you don't notice it, but you've got this terrible kind of grudge and this hole in your life, because it's bad falling out with, you know, with your family, because it just gnaws away at you. So, you know, we got, like Phil says, we got 2 things back. We got our old job back, and we got our brother back. You know, how's that?
Yeah, and this time for me, it's got to be, you know, because we have made albums and we've been working together. It's almost the elephant in the room, and we're sort of trying to put a brave face on it, but it's not really been enjoyable, and it's not been the chemistry, and we're sort of trying to make out this. Do you know what I mean? But retrospect is a wonderful thing, and this, for me, this time it's got to be. Yeah. It's got to be that. You genuinely got to be that. Otherwise, I'm out. It's not worth it. I've got my brother back.
You're not talking about getting out again already, are you?
No. I was just saying.
Did you hear that?
No, did I say that?
Yeah.
Did I say that out loud?
Yeah.
For me, when I go back as a fan and as a listener of albums, and I go back, and I was talking to Paul about listening to Middle of Nowhere, and that album had just amazing cohesion to it, and it felt like it felt like a union, right?
Right, as an album.
Then the Blue album, which was also good, but in my opinion, the Blue album didn't have the same kind of cohesion to it as Middle of Nowhere did. So as a fan, again, I'm curious to see what the next album is like, because the energy between you is so good. I'm guessing that it's going to go back to that sort of musical cohesion as well.
Well, yeah, it's funny you should say that, because, yeah, I mean, the Blue album's the Blue album, and it is your little thing at the time, you know, but it's not, that was when it was properly broken in our relationship, and I think that sort of comes through a little bit on that every now and again. I can see that, but, and yeah, in Middle of Nowhere, we're a little bit, yeah.
Middle of Nowhere, it was a great album.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And then Wonky.
That's what I was saying.
Tell me about that one, because
what?
Wonky was a good one. That was a real kind of.
That was where we got back together, though, wasn't it? Again, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it was sort of, we almost made it. Do you know what I mean? But there was still unsaid things that we didn't know what were unsaid or what they were, what was to be said. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like not knowing how to fix it. But that was a bit like putting on a brave face. But it was a little bit more. We gelled a little bit more, didn't we, on that? But it wasn't like this, like how we are now, in my opinion, how I feel.
So tell me about Wonky.
I mean, Wonky was really, we'd hit the ground running with 2 years worth of, 2 seasons worth of festivals, and just wanted to sort of put together something that was made of stuff that we'd like to play live, basically. So that was the kind of idea behind that album. It's very much, not that we played all of it live, but trying to do things that were going to sound good in a live environment.
Yeah.
I don't think the next album's going to be like that. I think there'll be elements of that, like there always is, but I think this is going to come more from like a story kind of vibe, or so. Do you know what I mean? I think the next one's going to be more of a, like you say, like a cohesive, sort of solid piece of work, like the middle of nowhere.
It's going to be enjoyable making it, otherwise it ain't going to happen.
Which could be frightening for people like us, who when you say story, long track, that's not the musical environment that we're in anymore. Especially with dance music, where we were talking at work the other day about the art of the warm-up DJ, because you get bangers at 8 p.m. now. Before you used to get bangers at like 1, 2 a.m. in the morning. Warm-up DJ comes in and it's right into it.
No, that's not right then.
But the music of someone like the DJing of someone like Sasha, who builds and builds and builds. The music of someone like Orbital, where tracks blend in, and there's no 3-minute single with a big, where's the drop? Knowing that you guys are going to go back to doing that magic that you do you just fly in the face of all the stuff that's popular? You just do, we're going to do what we do, and how it's going to come out, it's going to come out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the only thing that could be different is I don't think, back in the day we were making sort of like 78-minute albums, because that was the, CDs with a new format, and that's kind of what you did. But I think those albums were too long. I'm a real fan of the 45-minute album.
Space provided.
Yeah, of course you do. Young and enthusiastic and excitable, but actually I think 45 minutes is a better kind of listening experience,
Well, it's not, it's what it's going to be,
Yeah, of course. But I kind of, part of doing music is kind of, for me, but it's a time-based medium, isn't it? So I kind of like to think about the package that it's coming in. Is it going to be concise? I mean, some of my favourite albums I've been listening to recently. I was just listening to Exit by Tangerine Dream, and I was amazed to discover it's under 40 minutes.
But this is what we were saying about writing an album. We're old school, so we look at albums, in a like a DJ set, and then we go up here and then we go down there, and we can place, even their individual songs, you can place them in a way where you listen to it from beginning to end, like an old school vinyl type vibe. But now it's almost irrelevant because people put it on shuffle or something, you know what I mean? But that's okay. But this is how you can still do. We still think in the design of an album, and maybe, but that, I don't know.
I'm going to join lots of the tracks together just so it annoys people when they put it on shuffle.
Have you guys thought about collaborating with anyone for this record, or are you just going to kind of stick to the energy
just
that you
open,
have
I think, at the moment. I mean, I did. We did a really good festival called Blue Dot, really interesting festival up in. It's at the Jodrell Bank, which is an observatory, first radio observatory. You've got this big radio observatory telescope, and they do sort of like seminars during the day of science and all that sort of thing. And Goldfrapp was playing there, and she's like, "Oh, hello, Alison, I love her to death," and she's like, and she's featured on a lot of our tracks, and that was an idea. I'd love to do a track, but for me, I'd love to do, when we're starting something, and like a track will appear and go, "Fuck, wait a minute," and then she doesn't know this yet, by the way. When a track will appear and go like, "Oh, we need Alison for that," do you know what I mean? I'd love to. I'd love to think back. Yeah.
I was talking to a Brighton-based band as well called The Slaves. They were talking about coming in and just we don't know if it'll work, but we're just gonna try something out.
That's
just have a
old school punk sort of vibe. They're
in young men's bodies.
They are. It's great. It's almost.
Is your studio now? Because I know that you both have separate studios, separate houses.
I don't know. We've got one studio. No, I don't know. I didn't have a studio anymore.
So
I've got a studio.
I'm back to under the stairs.
Go to Paul's house.
Yeah, I do go to Paul's house. Almost the first week, I thought it was really sweet. Got some keys cut for me for the studio, which was a really lovely gesture.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was.
Still regretting it.
Has he brought his toothbrush and toothpaste over to put in the bathroom?
Chance.
What was that? I missed the question.
Is the toothbrush over in the bathroom yet?
No, not really. No, not that. They're steady on pigeon steps.
So I was in the office and I was playing on my speakers Halcyon, and I was playing the live version off of Insides, and it got to
the Belinda Carlisle,
our favorite part, Belinda Carlisle, Bon Jovi portion of the entertainment, and people started wandering in from outside, and I work with a lot of people who are, let's say, just younger than I am.
Yeah,
and they walked in and they were like, "What the hell is this? I know this track, but is this who remixed it?" I was like, "No one remixed it." So long story short, in 2017, you got to bring back some sort of remix concoction of something. I mean, that was a stroke of genius. And
that worked well. That was because we kept that very live, and that was a live joke, and our very nerdy fans, and the Trainspotting got some of them went with it, and some of them were really upset about it. My God, it's not pure. What the fuck are you doing? And it's funny because now we've gone round again. There's another generation came through, and that sort of that 80s sort of stuff. I was at a party, I'm not even joking, and like 16 to 25-year-olds playing all that stuff, and they'd sing it away, and they're singing all the it's like, how the fuck do you even know the words to these songs?
Paul was laughing earlier. Why were you?
Was I laughing?
He gave you a little bit of nudge. You guys have had this conversation before, and this is an I told you so moment.
No, I don't think so.
That's too deep. But I know what you mean. And then the Belinda Carlisle thing, because we played a lot of festivals this year, and the youngsters, they love that bit because they're playing that stuff. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I never really liked it at the time, but I don't know what you're doing here.
Well, let me ask you parents. As elder statesmen in this business, and as guys who have been through the ringer, divorced and remarried a few times together musically, you said earlier we didn't know how to fix it. Well, you fixed it. How did you fix it, and how do you keep? Well,
we fixed it by trying it again and giving it one last shot. In my opinion, that was it. And this year was that. And it's just like, well, we're at a stage where I can just see how Paul is. I've been trying to. Not have quite knee-jerky reactions. I've tried to be calm, Mr. White. It's like my white.
You calm?
Mr. White. I've been trying to just listen, because I'm not a very good listener sometimes. Listen to what Paul's saying, and not just quickly, just take it in and just take it slowly and just do it in a non-emotional way,
And Paul's learning to be more patient with you.
I have the patience of a saint now.
Yeah. I don't know where he got it from, but I'm loving it. I'm not going to question it.
Wide Awake Stories.
Transmitting from the Insomniac HQ.
You guys can't see this because obviously it's not a video interview, but they are brothers through and through. One has a very kind of outgoing personality. Phyllis is very talkative, and Paul is very kind of understated, very mellow, but I mean, very, very happy to be back in a good place with his brother.
Rich, I just loved the story about all of the younger Insomniac employees wandering into your office and being schooled on that live recording of Halcyon.
Yeah.
I just pictured you like Yoda in your cave and these little Luke Skywalkers coming in.
It was a little moment. We had some people
wandered in, just like the Pied Piper of Hamlin. Fuck, I'm old.
Sam, are you recovered from Nocturnal Wonderland?
I had a blast. It was probably my, I want to say 11th Nocturnal straight.
Wow.
Wow.
For those of you who went, you probably noticed that we went the boutique direction, and it played out really well. There was a nice, intimate vibe.
I felt the stages were more like physically and like emotionally on the same level as our headliners. Like there was a lot of kind of give and take with the vibes.
Most of my time was spent at the top of the hill where the Sunken Garden was. On day 2, This Ain't Bristol came in for a label takeover. So Billy Kenny, Maxi Mono, Teed, and a whole gang of others were ripping the stage. Everyone was really on top of their game.
And they did something special at the end too, right? Like a super mashup.
Yeah, there was the Good Vibes Sound Clash, which the first time they actually pulled off this concept, everyone that was on the stage earlier throughout the day came back and they did a back-to-back-to-back set, playing just throwback tunes, left of center house music, disco, you name it. But when I wasn't hanging out at the stage, I was roaming around, trying to lock down as many artists as possible to hear about their first DJ gig.
My first time playing in front of more than the people in mine or a friend's bedroom was actually at a friend's 17th birthday party. I was 16 and it was probably my 4th experience in using CDJs too. It went well from what I can remember, but I'm pretty sure if I relived it now, I'd cringe into next week. I remember spending the whole day finding lots of fidget tracks because my friend whose birthday it was loved fidget house and I was just getting into it at the time. I was mainly into spinning speed garage, grime, and then a little bit of house too. I was shitting bricks. Am I allowed to swear? I do remember shaking for the first 5 to 10 minutes until I got into the swing of things though. I remember a lot of friends coming to support and there being a few told that they couldn't come in because none of us really understood the concept of a guest list at the time. Funny because guest list is a word that I now use at least 5 times a week. I remember my first mix being really wonky and me thinking, that's it, this is going to be awful. But yeah, once I got into the swing of it, it felt natural. I'm positive that they weren't immaculate mixes, but I definitely wasn't clanging any beats soon after me going on. I didn't play my first proper club show until about 10 months after that, which was pretty much the exact same ordeal, but on a bigger scale. I was asked to DJ based on my productions, as a lot of producers at the time were, and so many of us didn't really know how to DJ. We just beat matched and did the best we could with our EQing. The best lesson I learned was to get out of a mistake so fast that only a few industry people or DJs may notice, if that. I do remember around the time that I moved to Germany around 3 years ago, my stage presence completely changed and I was confident enough to do whatever I wanted with my hands, face and body language whilst playing. I think becoming successful in your hometown will always be hard because more people know you personally and people either get jealous, don't see you for the talent you are, and many other reasons. All of this definitely came over time, but even if I was told these things without learning myself, I doubt I'd have really listened. My name is Billy Kenny and I'd like to thank you guys for having me.
Hey guys, Will Clark here, hope you're doing well. So I decided I wanted to be a DJ when I was 9. I started to learn and teach myself. I went to a thing called the DJ Academy when I was 13 in Bristol. It was a school for people wanting to DJ really. I think it was like a 12-week course. And then at the end of that course, we all threw a night on the park. The course was to learn how to promote, etc, etc. So yeah, I was 13 and it was in Bristol in a place called Fiesta Havana. I actually got thrown out of the club on my first DJ set because obviously I was too young, but they let me back in and ended up playing. It was a good night. It was back when vinyl was, everyone played vinyls, so I literally knew everything, all the cue points, when to mix in, when to mix out, when to use your EQs and everything like that. It was kind of a scientific, or no, not scientific, like a mathematical thing for me then. There was no like improvisation or anything like that. It was literally just play the records and leave. I was so nervous. I know I was shitting my pants. Getting up on stage for the first time, all I remember is being super nervous, but also really excited as well. It's kind of like the start of something, and I knew it would be the start of something just purely because I knew what I wanted to do for a living. The crowd reaction when I was first playing, I think I had like majority of my family there, all my brothers and sisters' friends. I think my school teacher came along actually, which was dope. She was a good teacher. The one thing that I kind of learned from my first DJ set was practice is key. There's nothing worse than going on stage and you don't know the records that you're playing, or you're not confident in mixing, or you're not confident on reading a crowd, But the key thing for me, it was to learn to be able to mix without thinking about it. And then from being able to mix without thinking about it, it turns to then being able to read a crowd, which then means you can choose a record on what you think the crowd is going to respond well to. And then you can learn how to take a crowd on a journey and like go from different kind of genres in the genre that you play. So you're kind of just taking the crowd on like a super nice journey, but without them even knowing. Also, I ended up moving on to residencies in Ibiza when I was pretty young, from like the age of 17. Residencies made me so confident as a DJ. It allowed me to completely understand how to read a crowd, understand how to mix. Because I was playing like 8 to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, I learned my records by heart. I knew when the breakdowns start and things like that. So I think doing a residency is what everyone should do. Learning how to warm up for like big headline acts. You can always tell when a DJ goes from not learning to DJ to writing a massive track and then they're kind of put straight into the DJ world. You can tell there's amazing DJs out there and there's amazing producers that aren't amazing DJs. I think the key is if you want to become a good DJ, you just have to put the hours in, just like being a good producer, and practice and practice and practice. Big love, guys. Don't forget to check out my radio show on EDC Radio, The Barber Shop. My name's Will Clark. I'll see you very soon.
I don't know how official it was, but we started playing a bunch of house parties. We were never trying to be like big DJs or anything.
Yeah, we used to just get everyone around basically to our house and fucking DJ.
And
but then
Stevie Dre was managing us at the time. I don't even know why. We hadn't even played a gig yet, but he was managing us.
Well, because he's a surf groupie, so he wanted to be around surfers at the time, so he used to come and hang with us. But basically, he booked us at this gig, and the surf tour was in town. All our mates from Australia were in town, and basically we got a bus of like 50 of the boys to come down to San Diego and watch us on the decks. We get to the nightclub. We've never played a show before, and we're like, so where are we playing? And there was this big neon screen, and he goes, you're playing behind that? And we're like, oh, that's kind of weird. Why are we behind that? He's like, oh, well, I don't have a license for a DJ. So like,
we played our first set behind a fucking screen. No one could even see it.
Yeah. So the boys rock up, and we're already behind this LED screen, and we start busting out. Basically, I go out the front of the club. I look around. I'm like, you guys having fun? Like, what's going on? Is
anyone getting any girls or
yeah,
whatever?
kind of like that. And as I said that, this guy on the mic goes, at the time we were called Bareback DJs. And basically this guy gets on the mic and he goes, give it up for Bareback DJs, woo! And all of a sudden I look around and there's just gay people just pashing each other off. And all my mates are in the corner just going, are you fucking kidding? Pretty much, that's basically it, really.
Yeah, well, we didn't realise, which is not even a problem, but our first gig was in a gay bar and we were called Bareback DJs, and we were like this highlight standing behind a LED wall that no one could even see us. Yeah, it was kind of weird. I remember all the boys I remember we'd egged them on too, like, let's go, come and support the boys, have a hell night, try to pull some chicks or whatever down in town, but it didn't end up like that, but it was pretty funny.
They got a couple ass grabs.
Yeah. But it was a good vibe, and we
but I just pretty much want to say, yeah, like fucking, it was a good time though. Stevie Dre, he got fired pretty much straight after that gig.
That was good.
It was good.
Well, actually, when we were called Bareback, we almost got a bunch of residencies actually at some gay bars.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was.
I kind of wish we fucking got them because they party the hardest.
I think we should have kept those actually, to be honest. They were pretty good at the time. Yeah, Bareback DJs. That was our first name, and now we're Cut Snake. Bareback DJs pretty much came around because Seds had a sign in his room underneath the decks, and it was an ostrich neck, and it said, think before you bareback, because he used to bring
we'll leave the rest of it out,
oh fuck. Our bareback career was probably my favourite of it all, I reckon. Like, we went out one time, this is probably the second show, and we used to love Richie Horton and shit like that. I remember
this one was like more built up, like people, there was like a flyer and stuff for this one.
Like Bareback DJs coming to town, it's on. So at the time we seen Richie Horton was like using Tractor, and we're like, we've got to get Tractor, it's the coolest shit ever. Use your laptop.
We went out and bought it that day, I reckon.
and we set this fucking thing up in the club, and we had to play every song backwards.
Yeah, we didn't set it up right. We set all the chords up backwards so we couldn't figure it out. And the screen on the computer, because like when we were trying to DJ, like from the Lappy to the CDJs, everything was going backwards. The music was going forwards.
So every time you wanted to go forward on a track, you'd have to go back.
Backwards. Everything was in reverse.
You have to go forward.
And we played like four tunes, I reckon.
And they all we bogged.
And the guy that was booking us was like, you guys need to get the fuck off right now.
This is Wide Awake Stories.
Yeah, those guys are pretty nuts. I mean, all it takes is one follow of their Instagram to know how nutty they are.
Have you ever heard an Australian talk that you didn't want to party with?
No, not at all.
No.
Yeah,
I'm doing it wrong.
You guys want to get a hold of us, you can find us on Twitter at insomniac.com, on Facebook at the same, Insomniac, DOTCOM, or you can hit us up on the Rave Hotline, 310-818-9406. Call us up, tell us about your first DJ gig, tell us about your first club experience, tell us about the time that you had a falling out with your sibling and patched things up and then went on to tour the world.
That's very specific.
You gotta be specific. Things not to call us about. Ticket on sales.
Yeah, true.
But don't call us up and ask about when the lineup for EDC Vegas is getting released. Call us up, say what's up, tell us a great story, tell us a funny story, tell us a sad story. We want to hear your stories. Your stories are what make this show what it is.
So that is it for this episode, and we will catch you next month for Ep 14, when we'll be talking a lot about Escape, which will have just happened.
Tune in next month for a new episode of Wide Awake Stories.